Hello everyone, welcome to another artwork analysis. Now, I've talked about Princess Mononoke in the previous two-part video series, but I figured it might be better if I were to give credit to one of the uh, big animation background directors at Studio Ghibli, and his name is Kazuo Oga. Now, he might not be the sole reason Ghibli backgrounds are great. I would say he is a big part of it. But of course, studio environments, it's hard to really understand who is contributing what. But he is the biggest name when it comes to the backgrounds for Studio Ghibli movies. So I'm gonna use his name for the sake of just clarity. But I just want to make sure that as a preface, I am assuming that he is contributing to most of these backgrounds in a big degree, if that makes sense, in large majority. Now, anyways, after that, let's talk about the temperature shifts of his work, and I want to talk about the backgrounds for animation. The idea of what is the difference between making an illustration and to make something for animation. And it's mostly going to be a compositional thing, and you'll see what I mean when I talk about it. So, first of all, I want to talk about temperature shifting. Now, right off the bat, when you look at these backgrounds, you realize that these do feel pretty realistic, yet fantastical. So, a big part of it is Kazuo Oga's backgrounds are pretty good at using the fundamentals. And the reason why is, and I'll talk about it in a bit as well, he has free reign when it comes to how realistic his backgrounds are because it is a direct contrast to the simplicity of the characters. Now, when it comes to backgrounds for animation, you have to consider the character movements. And when you have characters that will automatically stand out, then Olga is able to do these super realistic backgrounds because it will always contrast with the characters. And this might not be the case in other works as well. So when it comes to other cartoons, you might see it's a simple background with simple characters, or it might be even be reversed. The backgrounds are very simple, but the characters are more realistic. It depends on the style, and obviously it depends on the budget. And Studio Ghibli tends to not take any liberties when it comes to budget for backgrounds. They're generally really nice. Self-explanatory, of course. Now, anyways, I'm going to go back to the idea of temperature shifting, which is a realism painting fundamental. And what I mean by this is, let's just ignore the characters for now. There's a rule of thumb when it comes to environments, or anything rather, and it's that when you have two different planes, so in this case, one is in shadow, two is in light. The more important thing to note is that there has to be a difference when it comes to temperature shift, no matter how subtle. Because if they are reading as the same temperature, you are not going to create the sense of three dimensionality. This is absolutely a fundamental when it comes to painting. Again, you can break the rules at your own discretion, but in reality, when you observe reality, you will realize that shadow and light tends to have a temperature shift. And if it doesn't, then you risk making things look too flat. So when it comes to Kazuo Oga's work, you notice that I'm going to use one and two the exact same way just to give you the idea. And of course, you can just analyze all the other places that he uses it, this type of fundamental, this temperature shifting. But you realize that there is, in all of these examples, each of these will have a slight temperature shift. And of course, when it comes to more cartoony backgrounds, you might see super different temperatures when it comes to light and shadow. But of course, you have to be very subtle when it comes to, well, more subtle rather. You have to be more subtle when it comes to realistic painting. So here in the first shot, let's make a bigger window here. Oh, yeah, whatever. Anyways, so the plane here is directed by the skylight of the blue. So even if you see right here, you see there is a leakage of blue there, just to show that yes, it is affected by the skylight, which makes the shadow make sense. And of course, number 2 here is affected by the sunlight. Now, the sunlight, of course, is warm, generally speaking, or neutral. Now, of course, sunlight tends to be very malleable when it comes to painting. So if it's gonna save your composition, just go with whatever temperature shift you require, and the sunlight will be able to justify it. But anyways, notice how 1 and 2, there's a warm here and there's a cool relationship going on. And of course, you can find it over here as well. It's very subtle. We're talking about gray to gray, but we're talking about warm gray to a cool gray. And again, when it comes to more realistic painting, you want to be subtle about it, because you could go really overboard, and that would kind of break the laws of physics of light. And this is something you would probably have to consider when you are painting from reality, something that you probably have to train your eye to see. Here, same shot, cool shadows here, or cooler shadows. Oh, whoops, or whatever. And then you can look at number 2 here, which is affected by sunlight. And of course, the cast shadows help and stuff, and the drawing itself, which is brilliantly crafted. But just understand that a big part of it is, again, look at the divide here between light and shadow, and notice how there is a beautiful temperature shift that's just perfect and naturalistic for the scene. Then we can go into the third shot here. Well, actually, no, let's not say it's the same deal. So while there is still a divide here from shadow to light here, now we're reversing the relationship. This is more like a cool outdoor environment. So number 2 is actually cool now. Oh, cool. And then the shadows are warmer in contrast in the interior, because it's not affected by the cool blue lighting that you see from outdoor. This, again, comes down to what saves your composition, what you require, and what mood are you trying to make in these scenarios. Easier said than done, because, of course, balancing reality and balancing mood and atmosphere is very, very difficult. But Kazuo Oga, one of the biggest things that kind of stand out for me is his sense of really subtle and naturalistic temperature shifting. Now, let's talk about backgrounds for animation next. So, there's a difference between illustration and doing backgrounds. As it would be implied, you have to consider the characters when it comes to making an animation background, because the characters are always going to be the focal points of your scene, meaning there is a bit of liberty when it comes to your backgrounds. So what I mean by this is, it's the most apparent when you look at the one at the top here, the first background here. Now, if I were to erase these characters, and mind me, it's going to be very rough here. But you notice that immediately now without the characters, there are a lot of potential focal points. We're talking about, we're talking about blue to yellow. There's green, strong green here. There's like bricks here, value, contrast going on. There's such a stark blue here, red, whatever, right? So we're juggling a ton of potential secondary focal points. But because of the fact that Kazuo Oga knows there are characters here, the focal points are kind of given to him, meaning that if these are primary focal points, then everything else doesn't have to be worried. You don't have to worry about them. Because again, with all these secondary focal points, they're not going to catch attention from the main focal points, which means everything kind of complements into the character action. Now, this is exclusively a background for animation thing. You cannot really pull this off when it comes to fine arts and illustration, because obviously there is no flat, simple anime character action going on to catch attention for you in those cases. Even if you're doing an animation style illustration, it's just not the same. Motion always catches attention the hardest. No matter how you draw these characters, if they're moving on a still image, they will catch attention over everything else, meaning these secondary focal points are not going to conflict with each other, because again, the main characters are catching the most attention. Now, of course, this doesn't mean you have to forget all the fundamentals of composition. So in this case, he has to frame the characters here. So here you notice the action is just brilliant here. And part of it is, again, you have to cater to what the studio requires. So Kiki and Gigi are around here. They're going to catch the most attention. But why not just frame it better? Add the sign here, make people look at the characters and frame them so that the audience will not look out of composition. So there is still those fundamentals of composition going on. And again, you are complementing the animation when you're doing background. So keep that in mind when you are catering your implied movements and other types of value or color movements going on. And of course, we can use that for here as well. We have a door here, and of course the perspective is all pointing towards Kiki here. Of course, doors kind of catch the most attention naturally, but something to think about. And again, you can get away with a lot of different secondary focal points when it comes to backgrounds because of the nature of the characters catching the most attention, but you still want to complement them. And again, it's one of those things that kind of put you into specialized territory if you are really good at doing backgrounds for animation. It's a different skill set, but still there are some shared similarities when it comes to fundamentals. Hopefully that makes sense, and hopefully that was helpful. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.